Hi, hope you're all well. Welcome back to the Maths and English YouTube channel. I'm one of the math tutors here, and today we're going to be looking a little bit at coordinates, and in particular coordinates in all four quadrants, what it means and how we work them out. So let's hop over to the whiteboard and get straight into the lesson. Okay, so when it comes to coordinates in all four quadrants, there's three key points we need to understand. Point one is, what are the different quadrants? Do they have names? What do they actually mean by different quadrants? Point two is, how do we plot a point on the graph? And point three is, what is the origin of a graph? So when people say find the origin of this graph, what does that actually mean? So let's start with point one as to what are the different quadrants, what does that mean? Here you can see we have a graph. We have four different sections, and I'm going to help you work out what quadrant is what. So if you got a question, for example, like question B, what point is in the second quadrant? If you just look at this graph, you've got no idea what quadrant means what. So there are all numbered, so it goes from quadrant 1 to quadrant 4. But how we work out what quadrant is where is we go, okay, quadrant 1 is this top right quadrant, so we put that as quadrant 1. And the reason for this is that x values along here are all positive, and the y values are also all positive. That is quadrant 1. So next up we have quadrant 2. So quadrant 2 will always be the top left, so we can write quadrant 2. And the reason we know this is when the y values are still positive, but the x values are now negative. X equals negative, and y equals positive. Okay, so you should be getting the idea a little bit now, but to work out quadrant 3, we look for when x is negative and y is also negative. So here quadrant 3 is going to be the bottom left, because x is always negative in this quadrant and y is also negative. And then finally, the last one, when x is positive and y is negative, that will be our quadrant 4. So for this question, part B, which point is the second quadrant? Okay, so now we know what second quadrant means. We're looking for negative x, so we go along the x, okay, the negative part's here. And we know it's a positive y, and the positives are up here, so it has to be this top left quadrant. And the point, so is there any point in this quadrant? Yes, so there's C, which is in the quadrant. So here, our answer would be C. So point 2, how do you plot a point on a graph, or how do you spot a point on a graph? So as you can see in this question, we have write the coordinates of point A, B, C and D. So we're going to be trying to solve this and work out how we plot these points. So the points are obviously already plotted, but how we work out what these points actually are. So I've just cleaned up the graph again so it's nice and clear, and let's have a go at working out question A to give us an idea of point 2, how to plot a point on a graph. So let's start with A, as it's the first letter here. So as we see on the board, A is up here. It's in that first quadrant as we said, and there's two coordinates. X coordinate always goes first, so you always think what's the x first, then we look for the y next. So that's why there's two boxes. One will be the x value and the other's the y value. So what we do is we go across the x-axis and say, okay, where is A on the x-axis? So here, it's not a 0 because it's not on this line, it's not at 1, but it is on 2. If we go up the 2, we find point A. So the x, which is the first value always, has to be 2 here, and we put 2 in that box. Now we do exactly the same, but for the y-axis to find the second part of the coordinate. So we go up the y-axis and say, okay, where does it join? It's not at 1, it's not at 2, but it is at 3, isn't it? Because 3 hits with A. So in here, we put 3. So what I want you to do now is pause the video and have a go at working out the other 3. So the coordinates for B, C, and D. Pause the video quickly, have a go, then play it. I'll give you 5 seconds and we can see if you've got the other ones correct. Okay, so here I have plotted all the values. So if we look at B, we have 0, 4. So all we've done again is go across the x-axis, which is at 0, and up to the y-axis, which is at 4. and it's exactly the same for part C and also D. And finally, we have point 3, which is what is the origin of a graph. So here, origin is really simple. The origin of any graph is where the graph is at 0 and 0 on both the x and y axis. So here, it's going to be right in the middle because we've got 0 here on the x and it's also 0 on the y. So when there's a 0, 0 coordinate, that is always the origin. So if we had a graph like this and we had numbers going up this side and also numbers up this side, the origin of this graph is going to be here where it's at 0 and 0. So here, part C is which point is closest to that origin. So now we know the origin is right in the middle. Here it's quite obvious that the closest point is going to be that C because it's 1 up on the y-axis and just -2 on the x, whereas the other ones are 4 on the y-axis, 0, we've got 3 on the x, -2, and we've got 2, 3. So C is going to be the closest here. And that is key point 3, also crossed off. I hope from this video you get a good idea of what coordinates in all 4 quadrants are, how to work them out, and what they actually mean. If you have enjoyed this video and it's been helpful, make sure you hit the like button as it really helps our channel grow. Also subscribe if you're not already, and I will see you in the next video.